It's nice to be before you today, and today is a special day. And we thought about this and whether or not it would be appropriate to hold our quarterly breakfast on Veterans Day. And my name's Tim Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Four Corners Economic Development. And after the conversation that we had, we thought it was appropriate if we gave them the honor that they deserve from this country and from everyone in here. So if we do have any veterans in the crowd today, I'd like for you to stand to be recognized. Now, my job's pretty simple. I queue up our speakers, but today I want to take a minute anyway just to share a little bit more than that. Our quarterly breakfasts are meant to not just inform you, but bring relevant speakers and information and ideas to the table of this region for your better informed, for you understand where we are today and where potentially we can be tomorrow with the help of our partners and the information that they bring to the table. So we take the time to really think about relevant speakers, relevant information, and how we can make this region even be stronger. We do these on a quarterly basis, and in February will be my 2-year anniversary. And there's nothing that will humble you more than walking in for your very first day to an event that you know you're going to be speaking at, and you walk up to the head table, and they have sitting there dead in the middle a placard that says Tom Gibbs. Well, for those that don't know, my name's Tim. So Scott felt really bad about that, Scott Bird, who I believe is in Constantinople today, so he's a little far away. So he ran up with a marker and marked out the O and put an I. And when we did my evaluation after year 1, they broke out that placard and put it in front of me just to make certain everyone did know my name anyway. I'm really, really happy to be here today. My first introduction to the state of New Mexico was about 20 years ago when I came out and was on the campus of New Mexico Tech. I came out for a Homeland Security training. I went out to a terroristic bombing school and went out on a bomb range and studied about events that had happened across the United States, and then we'd go out and blow up the bombs. We'd go out and do field tests where we could have better response to issues that's out there. So one of my first experiences in this glorious state was with New Mexico Tech and was in Socorro. So today, we were very, very lucky to have the Interim President, Dr. Michael Jackson. We also have the Vice President and Provost, Lique Coolen, and we have Robert Balch, who's our board member, not only incredible cog at New Mexico Tech, but a board member of FORSED. And that's incredibly important because their presence in this community is felt not just on a monthly basis when we do our meetings, but also a direct connection to the university, the research, the application, our energy industry, and many, many other things that makes us stronger. So I'm truly, truly happy to do my part, sit down, drink my coffee, have my wonderful burritos as well. But first, I get to introduce Michael Jackson. He received his bachelor's degree in physics and applied mathematics from the State University of New York, Wasago. I mispronounced that, but it's close. And a doctorate in physics from New Mexico State University. He's held faculty positions at the State University of West Georgia, the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, Central Washington University, and is currently the interim president of New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology after serving as vice president and associate vice president of academic affairs and a founding dean of the College of Science and Technology in Millersville University in Pennsylvania. He's an advocate for incorporating hands-on learning into the curriculum that includes providing research experiences for undergraduate students. His selection as a fellow of the American Physical Society were in recognition with his leadership as co-chair of the Effective Practice for Physics Program, Task Force, and contributions to this initiative. He is a recipient of several awards, including the David Hilliday and Robert Resnick Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Physics Teaching and the American Association of Physics Teachers, and subsequently a Fellow of the organization. It's my honor to bring to Four Corners Economic Development Quarterly Breakfast, Dr. Michael Jackson.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for coming on out here today. And I'm going ahead and here to talk to you about New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, otherwise New Mexico Tech, who we are, and why you should care. Okay, so we have our, just a quick overview of today's presentation. There's three different parts. The first I'll go ahead and give, which is just an overview of the institution, a little bit about academics, and some of the outreach that we're doing. Next, I'll hand it over to Dr. Lique Coolen, who's right here. She can wave there. Okay, so she's going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the research arm of the institution. She's our Vice President of Research, and while also serving as our Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs. And then after that, we'll drill down a little bit more to talk about the PRRC, and Dr. Bob Balch, who's the director of the PRRC, will talk a little bit about that, and specifically as one example of the type of research activities that we do that actually, in addition to doing fundamental research that is there, that could also be used to drive economic development. And so that's one of the key things that we wanted to outline today. So along with our speakers, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the rest of the New Mexico Tech team who's here with me today. So I'd also, Jennifer Rainey, who's our Deputy Director of the PRRC, is there. We also have Dr. Ronaldo Sosi, who's an assistant professor in our Department of Earth and Environmental Science, as well as the program director of the Interdisciplinary Environmental Science Program. And then we also have Stephen Chase. Stephen actually wears two hats. The first hat is he's director of our Native American Initiatives Program, as well as director of our Upward Bound Math and Science Program that has cohorts in both Socorro and Albuquerque. And so let's talk a little bit about New Mexico Tech. So we were established in 1889 with the first set of classes offered in 1893. So we're talking about a quarter of a century before New Mexico even becomes a state. And so how did we go ahead and start? Well, we started in a one-room schoolhouse with 2 faculty and 7 students. Okay, and today we're bigger than that. Okay? So that's what I can say. So we have about 1,400 or so degree-seeking students. About 2/3 of them are undergraduates, and of those undergraduate population, over 85% are from New Mexico. And that is something that's very important for you to know. Because again, as you go ahead and look at filling positions, you want to grow your own. People who live in the community, that you want to go ahead and come back. And that's a great way of going ahead and facilitating their education so they can come back and fill jobs right in the area. Okay, so now in addition to that, I think one of the key things that makes us unique, given our size in particular, are the research centers. So we have a dozen research centers associated with the campus. And that's really important to the students' education, but as well as to then the economic engine within New Mexico. And so part of the reason of why you should care. Okay, well, I'll go through a couple of external groups commenting on that. So niche.com for like the 6th year in a row has ranked New Mexico Tech as the #1 school in New Mexico. We've gotten grades of A, overall grade of A for academics, and a value of A+ for, a grade of A+ for our value. And if you look at small colleges, we're ranked number 10 over 1,500, so within the top 1% in terms of the value of coming to a school like New Mexico Tech. And in terms of academics and in looking at that, again, ranking all across the U.S., we're in the top 2% of all of the small institutions that are out there, public and private. And so there's this STEM-based university that's right here in New Mexico that we want to make sure people know about. And if you go more and more in terms of different rankings and stuff, Forbes has a list. There's 2 universities from New Mexico on the list. New Mexico Tech is the highest rank. New York Times had a ranking as well. In fact, they had little slide bars on the things that you could value in terms of academics, in terms of athletics. The party scene is one of the things that are there. So if you go ahead and if you scroll down that and say that, we're not interested really in athletics and we're not really interested in the university or the town's party scene, it turns out that New Mexico Tech is the #1 small institution, okay, in the United States. Okay, now, I'll comment a little bit more on the athletics piece, and I really can't comment on the party scene in New Mexico, in Socorro. So that one I'll leave out. And one of the other rankings that we have is again, multiple years in a row, we've been called a hidden gem, which is very nice. It's nice to see that we're recognized as being a value, of being something that people should be looking at. But it's not good to be known as a hidden gem because that means people don't know about us. And one of the reasons why we'd like to come out here today, and we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here, is so that way you can go ahead and help uncover this hidden gem. And so what are the key things that I think that makes New Mexico Tech special? It's learning by doing. So in order to go ahead and get a STEM education, you got to push buttons, turn knobs, and design and build things. That's what you have to do. And the only way you're going to do that is by rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. Okay? There's only so much calculations that you can do, but you got to actually get in the lab and do it. And that's one of the key things that we go ahead and strive to do. So, for example, in our engineering courses, many of the programs start out with a design clinic for their first-year students, so they can go ahead and get an experience of what it means to be an engineer, of what it means to be maybe in a materials engineering kind of department. What does it mean to be in a petroleum engineering department? How do we go ahead and start going ahead and identifying and trying to go ahead and approach a problem? And then they'll end up their time at New Mexico Tech with a capstone course, which is a year-long design project where they get maybe something from their faculty or one of their industry partners to go ahead and try to solve. And again, that's a key critical component in learning by doing. The other component, though, is research experiences. So sometimes a student can work with a faculty member, maybe as part of a group, maybe as part of one of our research staff at one of the research centers. Maybe they're partnering with folks at one of the national labs or one of the federally government labs like AFRL, or maybe they're doing an internship with somebody from the industry and private sector. So all of these opportunities are there to go ahead and help them apply what it is that they're learning in the classroom to a problem that's not known. Okay, to where even the faculty member doesn't know. And so I loved mentoring students in my physics lab because they'd come to me and they'd say, "What do we do now?" And I'd be like, "I have no idea what we're supposed to do now." Okay, that's our job, is to go ahead and figure it out. And so being thrown into that unknown situation where you got to have to go ahead and troubleshoot and try to go ahead and use those critical thinking skills and creativity in order to solve that problem, that's exactly what we do. Our Department of Biology, for example, has something called a CURE course, a course-based undergraduate research experience. And they're embedding those courses in every level of the student's education. And so students can go ahead and start out by entering our biology program, and right away they're thrown in a research project. And in fact, the first year that we did this, the students who were in that course went ahead and published their research in a professional journal. So again, it gives them the opportunity to go ahead and solve these and attack these problems. They can do it in a credit and a non-credit bearing situation. And other ways that we try to streamline our program is to go ahead and have things like accelerated masters, where a student can double dip the chip and go ahead and use a course not only for their undergraduate education, but also for their graduate education. And so one of the key things that we push are co-curricular activities as well. So let me make it very clear, and I make it very clear to the students. Their #1 job is to go to class, do their work, and make sure that they go ahead and ask for help. That's the thing I tell them, as well as take a shower. Okay? So all of those things are very important for students. Okay? So, but that alone is not enough. They have to go ahead and get out and integrate, because it's great to go ahead and be book smart, but it's important about being able to apply it. And we talk about these type of skills, I like to call them the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. These skills are transferable no matter where you go, no matter what you do. So yeah, they're going to go ahead and have all of this content. The faculty will just hammer them with content and technical skills. But they need these other skills in order to go ahead and solve problems, to work as part of a team, to be able to communicate their ideas to one another, to the CEO of a company, to a member of the public, to politicians, all of these different groups. Okay, they need to be able to be creative in order to try to find solve these problems. And what's the process by which they can do it? That's where the critical thinking piece comes in. And so as you look at these different pictures, we start on the upper left, and that's our lunar robotics team. So students can go ahead and participate in student organizations. Sometimes they're just simply for fun. That's great. T-Club. Yeah, have at it. Enjoy. That's good. Okay. Other times it's lunar robotics, where they go ahead and compete as part of a competition. Okay. And that's a NASA team where they actually qualified to go to do the competition at the Space Center. And so there's that one. Athletics, we do actually have athletics at New Mexico, but it's different. Okay, so the first thing I tell people is that, you know, one of the first experiences that I had at New Mexico Tech is that it was a Saturday morning, and there was a whole lot of people excited, and they were on our athletic field. And what were they excited about? Well, if this was like UNM or NMSU, okay, it'd be probably a football game, okay? But at New Mexico Tech, they were all excited because it was a solar eclipse. And so they were all out there in their lawn chairs and stuff and getting all ready because there was a solar eclipse that was coming. Okay, and that's our campus. Okay, but we do have athletics. So we have rugby, for example, which has won the national championship twice now. The one in the bottom there on the lower right, that's our esports team who's won a national championship twice now. Okay, and even though we are a STEM-based institution, that's what we do. That's all we do. Okay, we have communication degree. It's technical communication. We have management degrees. Oh, it's engineering management. Okay, so everything is STEM focused there. But nevertheless, there are artistic opportunities as well. So we have student play productions where they actually partner with members of the Socorro community to do that. We have musical ensembles that students can go ahead and participate in. So even though it's a STEM-based institution, there are other things to go ahead and drive students. And again, this is where they get leadership skills. This is where they get team-building opportunities. This is where they go ahead and learn things beyond the classroom. I tell them, even if they did a work study and they go into the registrar's office and learn how to go ahead and manage all the complaints that come in through that office, that's still outstanding customer service experience that you're going to apply wherever you go. And I'm sure many of you are at companies, some of you may even be CEOs and own the companies. And I can guarantee none of you are in a situation where you can tell me you've never had a complaint. And if you do, I'd love to know because I'm going to call and make a complaint. Okay? So these are the co-curricular opportunities that we want to go ahead and get students to experience. And so where do these opportunities lead them to? Can our students compete with any other school that's out there? And the answer is yes. And how do I know that? Okay, well, let's go ahead and go look at the kind of accolades and competitions that students can go ahead and apply for. The first one is a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow. These are nationwide competitions. There's typically over 10,000 students that apply and maybe about 2,000 or so that are selected. And basically the idea is that they go ahead and get a grant funding in order to go ahead and do research for a PhD. And so that's an example of a tech student receiving a national award to go ahead and do that. We have students who go off to be Fulbright scholars. Okay, the other two students there are Goldwater Scholarship winners. Those are students who go ahead and compete to get this Goldwater Scholarship. And the goal is for them to go ahead and have a career in an R&D STEM field. Okay, so that's where these students go. So again, these are all nationwide competitions, and the experiences that these students have both inside and outside the classroom is what makes them competitive for this. And this is the thing that we hammer home to our students, and this is why that's important. Now, all of these students, though, are going off into graduate school. And of course, what you're interested in is, I want people to come and work at the companies in which I'm at. Don't worry about that. We do that too. Okay, so if I have a list here, and I'm just going to rattle it off just to give you an idea of the flavor, and this is what I do for the students too, to give them an idea of just the stuff that's out there. The first one works at a New Mexico-based company. The second one works at an international company who happens to have offices in New Mexico. And so that's what we have there. So the third one, yeah, you can go ahead and work at the state and federal government. Fantastic, there's that one. If you add on to the fourth one, oh, we have, you get an engineering degree, but you caught the bug for teaching. Oh, I'd love to go ahead and go out and mentor students and get them all excited about the things that are out there. Fantastic. We do not have a college of education. I have no interest in starting one. But what we do have is an opportunity, a pathway for our students to go ahead and qualify for teaching licensure. And so by doing that, they're able to go ahead and get the STEM content while doing the education courses that lead them to licensure, which allows them to go out and teach STEM courses in the high schools and middle schools. And so that's one pathway there. The one at the top there, I like to point out to students, because here we have a petroleum engineering student that was hired by Intel. Last I checked, Intel was not in the oil and gas industry. Curious. Okay, so why'd they hire him? Because they know how to do process engineering. And that's the key thing I tell them. You know those 4 C's, you know basic problem-solving skills. These skills are transferable, and you can go off and do anything you want. The education opens doors. It opens opportunities, okay? I can be a PhD engineer and still be a crappy engineer, okay? The key about it is what is the creativity and the 4 C's that you're bringing in order for you to go ahead and go out there. And I said, that's the key thing of this, is to learn those skills that are transferable and allows you to go out and solve problems. Of course, students can go off to medical school, like the student who went to Baylor there. That's a more traditional way. Other ones, they go out to work. Maybe they go to Lionel first, and then they go a medical physics route. The other one at the bottom there is a student who goes ahead and gets a physics degree as an undergraduate, goes out to work for a while, realizes, oh, I'd like to go ahead and get an advanced degree. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and pursue an electrical engineering degree. And then they get that at the master's level and then go off to do other work. And that's what I tell them. There's no wrong degree. Don't panic, okay? There's all this pressure to go ahead and say, pick a degree, pick a degree, pick a degree. Pick something that you enjoy doing. Recognizing you have your whole life to work. You have more than 40 years ahead of you working, okay? Your interests will change throughout your whole life, okay? So get a basic skill set. And then as you go ahead and go through, pivot. Pivot into the things that interest you, that drive your passion, that spark your curiosity. And then go ahead and pursue that education and then pursue that career that way. And the good thing is all of these things can build on each other. That's the benefit of having that STEM degree. It's the foundational skills with math as that central language that allows you then to go off and pursue the things that you're interested in. So in addition to the academic side, we also go ahead and engage communities in STEM education, often with the K through 12 school groups. And so there's a variety of different ways that we do that. New Mexico Tech is the home of the state's Science Olympiad and Science and Engineering Fair. So if you're interested in going ahead and supporting, how do I support these kind of groups? They have, a number of these have regional competitions that they're always looking for evaluators at. So that's the one thing you can do. And then the winners of those regional competitions then come to Tech for the state competition. And for the Science and Engineering Fair, the winners of those then go to the international component. And so that's the process there. But we also have a summer STEM camp, for example. So students come there. The cost is fairly modest. It's like $700 for a 1-week residential experience. But we have basically these experiences in different areas of our fields. So we'll have 1 week where they learn about materials and metallurgical engineering, 1 week where they learn about mineral engineering, 1 week where they learn about petroleum and natural gas engineering. All these different opportunities. And so you may have an excellent student in one of your local communities, and maybe they're interested in a STEM field. But their natural reaction is to pick something that they've heard about. Mechanical, electrical. Oh, those are nice. There's nothing wrong with those. But there's all these other things that are out there that they just haven't been exposed to. And so what a great way of exposing those students than to sponsor them to go to something like a summer STEM course, okay? And so again, these are opportunities that are there that we can talk about much further. There's other ones where we have tech tracks where we bring students to campus and participate in things. We also have some of our own programs like the Minor Mayhem, where it's basically robotics competitions, and we do that in partnership with New Mexico Mesa. And we also have a variety of different drone competitions as well. And so those are the things that we have. And how we go ahead and reach out. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to leave you with my portion at least in what you should be thinking about regarding New Mexico Tech. When you think about New Mexico Tech, I just want you to remember 3 things. Discover, build, innovate. That's what we do at New Mexico Tech. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Lique Coolen, who'll go ahead and talk a little bit about our research, the research arm of the institution. Lique?
Good morning, everybody. How can you follow this up, right? There's just no way. So I'm going to be the calming voice this morning and bring you. I'm just kidding. Thank you, President Jackson. So I'm Lique Coolen. I'm Vice President of Research, and I'm also overseeing our academic programs, which is what the Provost does. I've only been at New Mexico Tech and only been in New Mexico for 10 months now. Before this, I was in Ohio. I spent time in multiple states across the United States, but I have to tell you, New Mexico is just fabulous, amazing. I'm so honored to be in this state and to be part of New Mexico Tech. And you just heard about how special New Mexico Tech is. It is an incredible place to work and to serve the New Mexico Tech and the New Mexico community. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our research and our focus on research. And the reason I'm talking to you about research is because research drives innovation and it drives economic development. And so I'll try to kind of weave through to give you some examples and how research really is important for economic development. Our research happens across our campus. You just heard from President Jackson how our students are involved in these experiential learning, meaning research, right away from the beginning. Not just in the courses, but also immediately working with their faculty mentors in their laboratories and working with our research centers to not only do that discovery, building, but then drives and apply that knowledge to come up with solutions for real-world problems that are affecting our state, New Mexico. And so research centers, faculty research, student research is woven throughout what we do at New Mexico Tech. And so the students get that hands-on experience that you just heard about, which is so important for their learning and to drive our workforce development. So this is why they get all these critical skills that immediately to help your companies and you hire them. And in fact, New Mexico Tech, and you heard a lot of our data already in our statistics, is also known as is actually the #1 university in New Mexico where students graduate with the highest earning. That is because of STEM education, with high value, but also because of this research experience. Over 85% of our students leave by the time they graduate with a job in hand, or they go to graduate school. And they do that by working with the faculty, but also working in the research centers. And so in the next few slides, in the next few minutes, I'll highlight some of the research that we do at New Mexico Tech, emphasizing that the topics of research at New Mexico Tech are directly applying to problems of New Mexico. So those all align with priorities of New Mexico. And first here on this slide, you can see our research center, the Petroleum Research Recovery Center. And Dr. Bob Balch will talk to you in detail about that center. So I'm actually going to talk very little about this research center, other than to highlight that in this center, we focus on water resource and water resilience, developing technologies to improve our water quality and water availability in our state, energy initiatives that Dr. Balch will talk about as well. But we also apply advanced computing. We work on drone technologies. We work on AI in all of those centers as well. And then next to that on the picture, you see a Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources. This bureau, if you have never been to New Mexico Tech, please come and visit us. Contact us, we'll show you all of the campus. But the Bureau also has a beautiful museum of geology that is really, really worth a visit. In fact, it's worth multiple visits. And so what do we do in this Bureau? Well, they do a lot of state-sponsored projects to map our water resources. Incredibly critical, of course, to our state. In addition, in a lot of collaborations with the Petroleum Recovery Research Center, they do a lot of research to find out our critical minerals and how to mine our critical minerals, as well as working on energy initiatives, for example, mapping our ability and then apply our technology for geothermal. And then finally, a lot of that is done with remote sensing. So now we're bringing in our drones, and now we're bringing our planes to be able to map all of those resources for the state. Because the Bureau does a lot of state-sponsored research, all of that data is being made publicly available. And that's really important. So companies can gather these data, work together, and apply all that knowledge to find solutions that are important to you. And of course, in collaboration with New Mexico Tech and the Bureau and the PRRC to find the solutions that are important to you. So this is really an important service that New Mexico Tech offers to the state. And you can see that is woven throughout, but I just want to make sure that I really emphasize that. So this is another driver of economic development. The research that we do, providing the data, providing the tools to find solutions. Water and energy are actually a really large focus in New Mexico Tech. So on this next slide, you see 2 other research centers that focus on water and water resources and technology. My eyes are not good enough to read that slide, so I'm actually going to turn a little bit. In this first, on the left side, you see our Hydrology Innovation Center. So yet another center focused on water resources, but now focused on not only water resource mapping, but also water management. And so that is really important, again, finding solutions, developing technologies that help with water management. And on the other side of the slide, you see one of our research centers that is not in Socorro, but in Carlsbad, which is our National Cave and Karst Research Center, actually one of our oldest research centers in New Mexico Tech, all the way in Carlsbad. And why am I bundling this with water? Well, not only are we researching there how caves are formed and the microbiology in the caves, which is really important, but they're also a natural aquifer. So how is the water resources, how are they available in those karsts? And what are the influences of the karst in these structures on water? So those are some of the research that are going on there. In addition, these research centers do a lot of education. So again, this outreach to K-12, developing educational tools for schools to talk about caves and karsts, tours, of course, to this, as well as a large economic driver for that area in our state. In this next slide, I'm highlighting 3 different centers that are focused on homeland security and defense. You already heard from Tim, his experience with New Mexico Tech on our homeland security training program. This happens at our Energetics Materials Research and Testing Center. This is a program that we've had now for over 25 years, and we've trained thousands of first responders across our state and across our nation in energetics materials. So you heard Tim's experience with the bomb training. We are still doing that type of training, of course, constantly updating to the current national threats. And so these trainings are important as we are keeping our first responders safe, but also keeping the nation safe by training our first responders to recognize the current national threats. In addition, at this Energetics Materials Research Training Center, Testing Center, we do a lot of work with the national laboratories, Department of Defense, Air Force bases, again, all about deterrence. So keeping the nation safe. Next to that, you see the Playas Research and Testing Center, also focused on national defense, but it's in Playas, New Mexico. So again, you can see that not only are we providing these testing and training opportunities in Socorro, but we're also driving economic development in other areas of the state. And so Playas is actually a small town that New Mexico Tech acquired in the mid-90s, and we've moved into a very specialized test bed where defense contractors, national laboratories can come and test their technology. There we specifically focus on cyber network testing to utilize this town where nobody lives. It's now become a complete test bed. Very unique. And here we work very closely with our Institute for Complex Additive Analysis. So they actually do all the data gathering and all of the analysis for all the data in these test beds in Playas, as well as in our Energetics Material Research Testing Center, to take that to the next level and apply AI, machine learning, and learn about all of these different cyber attacks. So you can see here, the focus is on defense and national security, but primarily on deterrence and keeping us safe. We also have 3 very unique research centers at at a mountain close to our campus called the Magdalena Ridge. And here we focus on aerospace, so space-related, and astronomy. Our Magdalena Ridge Observatory has a 2.4-meter telescope, which actually has a mirror that is the same as in the Hubble telescope. Pretty awesome. So very unique. It's the only one of its kind in the nation. And because of its location, we can actually see things that other telescopes cannot see. And so you can imagine, you may remember a couple months ago in the news was about this asteroid that was about to hit Earth with a very high likelihood of hitting Earth, taking out entire cities. We were the first telescope to see that asteroid. It has now been shown, again, with images from our telescope, that actually we now know it will bypass Earth and not hit us. So that is some of the value. And right next to it on that same ridge is another a research center where they are building multiple telescopes. And those telescopes can then have their images completely intersected to get images with a higher resolution. So where our 2.4 meter telescope is really unique because it can detect very fast moving objects, this other interferometer research center can detect images with a very high resolution. So the resolution that you can see is cell phone size object, and perhaps even behind the moon. So you can see how this is also really important, not just for space research, but also for defense purposes. And then right next to it is a research center that focuses on lightning research. Incredible. So they actually have a platform up on that mountain, and you can imagine up the mountains you get a lot of storms and a lot of lightning, and they can actually trigger lightning by shooting rockets into the sky, trigger that lightning, and then gather the data. The students are below in a bunker, completely safe, gathering all the data. It's actually kind of frightening to be on that platform there, I have to tell you, but they're really safe below, gathering the data, gets all analyzed remotely, and they have incredible research about lightning strikes. Why is that important? Well, it's really cool to do that type of research, but it also, again, applies to even defense and national security and space-related questions, because lightning strikes happen all the time. And so when we are flying in our planes, we need to make sure that we know what is a lightning strike, how that happens, but also when there could be potentially a threat. So again, the students are in all of those different centers. They're learning different techniques. This interferometer, this second picture there, that is a technology that's never even been developed. That was a concept that we didn't even know was possible. So here the faculty and researchers are working together in developing that technology, and that can be applied again to these real-world problems. And then finally, on this last slide, I want to highlight our centers that focus on cybersecurity and AI technology. And again, here, this is focused on research using cybersecurity, but also education, and bringing cybersecurity awareness and tools to be safeguarding against cyber attacks, not only to our research, but also to small businesses, and bringing this to K-12 schools to educate our students. So again, here an example of economic development, how we're going out into the communities, providing training to small businesses, developing businesses that need help with making sure that they are aware and know how to safeguard against cybersecurity attacks. So the focus here is on research, getting our students ready for the workforce, asking these really hard questions that help bring technology and solutions to our state, but also helping with economic development by training our companies and our businesses in some of these applied tools. And I think that is my next slide. And so next, I would like to bring Dr. Balch up on the stage, unless, Tim, you want to do an introduction for Bob first? Thank you so much.
You know, we draw straws to see who has to go after Mike, because it's really hard to match his energy, and that's for sure. So thank you, Lique, for taking one for the team. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to talk about one of the research centers in a little bit more detail. I did want to follow up, though, just a couple of points. So raise of hands, how many of you went to college? A lot of people. Okay. How many of you in your freshman year had a job working in your field in a lab or in the field? Oh, it's 2 or 3? Okay, so New Mexico Tech, that's a really common thing. we have this thing that we try to put a name on, and the closest thing I can come up with is experiential learning. So you learn by doing. So the three probably largest research centers, between them hire 10% of the students at the university. That's just three of the research centers. And I think that's really important. I've hired students that were freshmen, left when they finished their master's degree to go somewhere else and work or get a PhD. And that's another thing we do, is we make students to get PhDs. So often in rankings by the National Science Foundation, we are #1 in public schools in the US for students who later get a PhD somewhere. So you'll find us everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Petroleum Recovery Research Center. Energy, very important to the state of New Mexico, of course. We're dedicated to improving oil and gas recovery, so we do a lot of research in that way. We've been doing this since 1977. We were created by the legislature and put it New Mexico Tech as a research division. And we like to think, pat ourselves on the back, that we have a pretty good reputation, both locally and nationally and even internationally. So what do we do? Well, that kind of depends. So when we were created, we were also told that we were going to get most of our own money. So that means you're going to do what funding agents or companies or other people want you to do. So the last 20 years or so, the federal government's been telling us, let's look at carbon. And more recently hydrogen and other things like that. But there's also issues that are important to the state, especially as the shale revolution has hit. You're seeing larger and larger volumes of produced water. So being able to manage that water is something that we've been working on for 3 decades. Maybe 8 or 9 patents total in there. And I'll get back around to this one a little bit later. But we also do all of the traditional hydrocarbon research. We still do enhanced oil recovery with CO2, with polymers, with alkaline surfactants. We do basic lab measurements for companies like Chevron on wettability and contact angles. We do work for companies that benefit economic development. One of the things we've been doing a lot lately is working with midstream companies, helping them get the permits and data together to collect tax credits for storing CO2, which they're already doing in their acid gas disposal wells. So we get involved in a lot of projects like that. So this is just a short list of some of the things that we do. I will go down the list there to the bottom where it says outreach and engagement. That's a real critical component of what we do, is sharing the knowledge that we generate, not just in scientific papers and at conferences, but as much as we can to people that actually can use that information here in New Mexico to keep the oil and gas flowing, because I think it's pretty important. So in FY25, the PRRC contributed to about 106 jobs in the state. That was 39 full-time staff. We support a large number of faculty at campus. We are interbedded with a lot of departments. And then 55 students as well. So, I mean, that's when you talk 1,500 student population, that's notable. I think fairly nice. So let me talk about those 12 supported faculty for a moment. So we bring in money, usually through grants and contracts. It can be from the federal government in various forms. So we do a lot of our money from Department of Energy, but also DOD, ARPA-E, Bureau of Reclamation, BLM, and other agencies. We also bring in money from companies. I've already mentioned a little bit about that. And also we do money for the state, or do projects for the state for money as well, although they're probably our lowest paying customers. We do important work with the NMERD in particular. Right now we're helping them get Class 6 primacy in the state of New Mexico. Earlier this year we were working on the framework for their comprehensive energy transition strategy. We wanted to make sure oil and gas was part of that. And what that means is when we do research, we work with departments. And I didn't put it on any of these slides, but there's, I think, 18 engineering and science disciplines at New Mexico Tech, or 20 or 14 departments. 14 departments. Okay, so we've worked with 14 departments over the last 25, 30 years. So every department almost on campus, maybe not biology, has been involved in some way in one of the projects that we do. And that means the students are, and it means the faculty are. So we also do part-time positions between departments, and our research center where we have people with a foot in both sides. So they're a half-time professor and they're a half-time full-time researcher, or half-time researcher. Full-time researcher, half-time professor, something like that. So I think that's very important. And these are the kind of things that really make New Mexico Tech different. Those 55 students that are doing real jobs. I mean, I was a freshman, I think I worked at the library. The second year I had a job at the gym. So that's not the New Mexico Tech experience for a lot of students. Okay, so FY25. 38 active projects that we had going on at just the PRRC, not even counting all those other research centers. Of course, the federal government, up through about January, was really interested in energy transition. So we have a lot of work in there, but also produced water and management of produced water, which is a real interesting thing, because you start to look at it and you figure out that some of that waste is actually good stuff, like lithium that you can extract. Enhanced oil recovery, of course, and lots of projects by industry. Probably half of those projects are from industry. Although I will say, on a money basis, the industry work is about 5% of our dollars, but it is about half of our projects. Okay, we do partners, universities, and not just in New Mexico, but also in the region and abroad. We work with, at last count, 6 national labs, and especially our 2 in New Mexico. Work with geologic surveys and dozens of private companies. We also try to think about what's coming next. What is important for future, mostly because we know we have to apply for money to get those grants in the future. But also because things change. And you need to be adaptable and able to apply what we know, especially which is subsurface information, to other things. So we right now are also focusing on using oil and gas technology for geothermal. And there's a couple reasons why you want to do that. A lot of geothermal wells are drilled using water well technology. So you're limited in depth. You're limited in the kind of completions you can do. You're not going to hydraulically fracture to get better flow, things like that. But with oil technologies, you can really dramatically increase the potential for geothermal. So you're taking legacy data to try and figure out best places where you might be able to generate a geothermal resource. It's just a few of our industry projects. A couple of years ago, we drilled a well up here. That was a test well for our CO2 storage site. It spent $13 million in the Farmington area on that well. We have been involved in about 8 wells in the Permian. These are deep acid gas disposal wells with midstream companies. Those are run about $35 million by the time you complete them to a Class 6 standard. And for what that's worth, we've created the capacity for about 2 million tons a year of CO2 storage in the state. And this is something that I think is fairly important going forward. We do have a wide network, numerous industry partners. You can see a few of them there. And then there's water. So I don't know if you noticed, but it's a little dry out there. We live in a desert. A lot of the things that we want to do for economic development rely on water. A lot of the things that we're aspirational to at the state government level, especially things in energy transition, require a lot of water. So I'll give a couple of examples there. If you want to make a 2-foot by 2-foot square of silicon wafers. That's what you make a solar panel out of. You need just short of 5,000 gallons of water to do that. So when somebody announces in Albuquerque that they're building a $1 billion solar panel plant, the first thing that hits my mind is, oh my God, whose water did you take? Because there's not enough. So you need to find other ways to get to water. And then the water, by the way, that you use to make those solar panels has lead and other heavy metals in it, so you have to process that water before you can put it back into the system. The other thing I like to talk about is data centers, because they're also incredibly large consumers of energy. So if you've ever been south of Albuquerque, actually a little bit south of Los Lunas, anybody been there lately? It's a big sea of solar panels, right? Those solar panels run that facility during the day. They store some power to run about 4 hours of time at night. The rest of the time, they turn on a gas turbine. So all of these things kind of come into play and are important. So even to accomplish something like a partially solar-powered data center, you need to have natural gas available. So very important for us to keep that kind of thing in mind. And then the water part comes into play there too, because they use water for cooling. They have a well that they can draw 5 million gallons of water a day from to cool their facility. And that's water that somebody can't use for a farm or for domestic water or anything else. So always important in New Mexico to keep your eye on that water balance. So we have a few projects from the Bureau of Reclamation right now that are active. We've had about a dozen over the last 20 years. Dr. Jinja Yu works in my facility and is very good at figuring out ways to filter water in an inexpensive way. And we have a partnership with PESCO up here in Farmington, and they've taken some of the technology that we developed in our labs at the PWRC and turned it into really cool looking machines. I mean, I'm blown away that I was involved in any way in something that led to that. I think it's pretty cool. So you also want to think about the social aspect of things. So we created these machines to handle produced water, especially in the Permian. You could make enough clean water if you processed half of the water to do everything you could possibly want, not just in the state, but also in the entire region. So it's a huge potential resource. It comes down to cost. But there's other things that you need water for, especially if you get up here onto the Navajo Nation. My friend Steve Gray, I don't know if he's here today. Oh, Steve's in the back. Told me a few years ago, to my chagrin, that people drive many miles to get bad water out of wells just to survive. So you can take the same technology, scale it down a little bit, put it on some of these wells, and create water. So we've also done that. They've built 2 more really cool looking machines. I have some pictures in a minute, so you don't have to take my word for it, that have the potential to help people with water. So you maybe have driven up on one of those tanks and it says there's water is bad, don't drink it. There's uranium, there's arsenic, there's all this bad stuff in there. There's official signs and graffiti all over them. And then you, as you drive away, somebody's pulling up with a water truck with a tote in the back. So, do some good. So this is kind of the earliest prototypes of the most recent version. What we use is called hollow fiber membranes. They're incredibly thin polymer straws. The inside of the straw is about the diameter of a human hair. And you bundle thousands of them together. And you use a heat difference between bad water on one side of the straw and clean water on the other side of the straw to drive the molecules of water vapor across the membrane at a nanoscale. So now I get to say we're working in nanotechnology too, which is also kind of cool. So that's kind of what that looks like, what it looked like in 2016. This is the biggest PESCO unit right now. This one's going to be rated for around 5,000 gallons a day. It's on a skid. It's actually out at a site here in the community at a Hillcorp water processing location. The idea there is you have a tank of dirty water, you process it, and then you have a tank of clean water and a smaller tank of much dirtier water. And then you pick up the skid and you move it to the next well or the next site and run it there for a week or so. So that's what that looks like. And then these are the brackish water desal. We actually have a project called NW4PP, which is for working with the Navajos to try and get some of these water projects. We have a partnership with Navajo Technical University, a joint project with a goal of building 10 of these at different wells in the nation as a pilot project. So I think that's all I want to say. Thank you.
We do have time for some questions today. So you've been introduced to a lot of different information. And if you have any questions, our friends from New Mexico Tech would be happy to answer your questions today.
So Dr. Jackson, can you comment on the rating for New Mexico Tech, something like the Carnegie category or something like that, or maybe Dr. Coolen, I'm not sure which.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and start, and if you want to chime in, go ahead. So different universities can go ahead and have Carnegie classifications based on a variety of different factors, one of which is the types of degrees that they go ahead and do, and the number of degrees, and then also their research portfolio. How many grant dollars, what are the annual expenditures for grants, contracts, and other sponsored activity. And so right now, New Mexico Tech is like a research-intensive kind of institution. And the reason for that is because we're a relatively small institution, and one of the key factors of being an R1 or an R2 is the number of basically terminal degrees that you go ahead and graduate, PhDs or something similar to that in certain disciplines. And so I think right now the new classification is such that for R1 designation, it's like you graduate over 70 PhDs a year. For R2 classification right now, the designation is 20. And in the last 2 years, New Mexico Tech has graduated 20 and 21 PhD students. And so this year, if we're on track to where we should be, if not, the graduate dean's going to be in trouble. But we're on track of going ahead and graduating another 20 PhDs, in which case we would be classified as an R2 institution. And so, and I think one of the key things with that is it's more visibility and recognition in terms of just prospective students, particularly for graduate programs. And so that's one of the key things that we've been doing. The number of research expenditures, I can't remember, it's like almost on the order of 5 million or something like that to qualify. I don't know if you remember. Well, our annual expenditures in terms of research and sponsored projects and other kind of sponsored activities exceeds 120 million. So, which is actually comparable to both NMSU and UNM if you exclude the medical school. So, so even though we're a size much different than UNM and NMSU, our research expenditures are actually quite similar. And so, and that's because not only the faculty and student research that's there, but for example, as an example of the research center, the research centers that are there as well. And so that's one of the ways that they look at classifications. That's how the universities use it. And it's just one other way of just, again, trying to be a discovered gem. So.
Do we have any other questions today? Please.
I was wondering, so the water that comes from the oil and gas for the disposal wells or whatever, they can actually filter it so it can actually be like mixed with drinking water or city water, and maybe have it come to a certain level that's acceptable for drinking?
So 2 answers. Yes, you could. you probably won't do that with the water. I think mostly what you're going to do with cleaned up produced water is use it for industrial uses, and then that diverts water that can then go into agriculture or communities. So there's no technical reason why you couldn't drink the water. I have actually drank the water. Didn't even put Kool-Aid in it. But it's pure water. I mean, essentially it's as clean as RO water. So it's what they call ultra pure, less than 20 parts per million. It's as clean as fresh rain. But that's not what your brain says. So Sierra Nevada and California, they made a gimmick beer a few years ago, and they took treated sewage water from a plant in San Francisco and processed it, made it really clean, made beer with it. I'm not going to drink that beer. Right. I know that every bit of water on the planet has been through people, but just not that recently. So a lot of it's perception. But the technology is really there. You could do all of that, but the main thing to do is try and find water for industrial uses.
And then what about the desalinization? Are you guys doing a lot of that?
That's really what this does. So in the Permian Basin, where the water is about 150,000 parts per million, that's 5 times saltier than seawater. You don't condense it as much as you do here, but you can take that water to 0 or 20, less than 20, pretty easily. And up here in the Farmington area, the water's more like about sea level, around between 10 and 30,000 parts per million. That water, you can reduce the volume. So if you have a 100-gallon tank of bad water, you can end up with a 10-gallon tank of bad water and a 90-gallon tank of good water. So it's a very positive thing, and a way to get some of those water resources available. So if you watch this kind of stuff, this is going through regulatory and legal processes in Santa Fe right now.
Yes, I was wondering on where we were at as far as produced water in Santa Fe. Recently in Midland, back in May, I drank some of the produced water there in the Permian because the company off Fortis, they have it that clean where you actually have to add salt to make it.
Wow.
It's distilled water pretty much. It's so clean. It's so clean they show the impact on each DNA strand, each amino acid within the DNA. They have to go so far above and beyond to show how clean it is. But I'm curious where we are as a state in Santa Fe right now, because quite frankly, New Mexico has been the thought leaders in the industry for produced water. Texas, out of necessity for survival, is going to be the action leaders, and I'd rather see New Mexico be first, of course.
So in an amazing fit of irony, we're also behind California on produced water. So for about 15 years, you've been able to take cleaned up produced water in California and use it for non-food crops. We're pretty far from that in New Mexico, being able to do that. And it's mostly that head thing, that perception thing. Can you actually make it clean? And of course the answer is yes. All the water on the International Space Station is, 99.7% of the water on the International Space Station is recycled from your sweat and your water vapor from breathing and other things that you do to make liquids. So we can do this. You can make the water clean enough. It's really just a public acceptance of it. And Senator Scher is probably very, very familiar with this, but you have very, very vocal minorities in the state that make a very large amount of noise. So you have to really go through that process. So last summer I testified actually on behalf of NMOGA for the produced water at the WQCC, and I think that we convinced the board that you could clean up the water to whatever standard you wanted, and then the political pressure caused them to go a different direction, but now they're getting pressure to go in a different direction. So you have a lot of that kind of stuff that goes back and forth. I'm hoping this year that we will catch up to California at least in the ability to do something with the produced water. And I think it will help a lot. And there's another hidden factor in this. The reason why Texas is doing this for survival, it's not because they need the water. It's because of seismicity. So as you're producing the shale oil and gas, you make a lot of water. And you take that water, it's bad, you inject it into saltwater disposal wells, and because there's so much of it, you're actually pressuring up those aquifers and causing little earthquakes, and that causes concern. So same thing in New Mexico. Companies want to reduce that disposal volume. It costs money to dispose of the water, and as long as you can clean up the water for less money than it costs to dispose of it, the company it comes out ahead. And then the society can come out ahead if that water has a beneficial use.
Dr. Jackson, looking at the region here, this is a very diverse region. Looking at the border towns, looking at the tribes, looking at economic development, looking at the fact that this area is energy dependent and a lot of energy can be produced here. This region, in my opinion, we're at the very edge of making something happen. But that's been like the last 10 years, we've been at the very edge. New Mexico State has stepped in and come in, but didn't quite get things going. And so, I guess what I'm looking at is the outreach and kind of what Bob there talked about. Looking at how we can begin to educate the communities. And I guess the question is looking at that outreach aspect, and the thing that I think I learned from the past experiences was there wasn't as much communication between this region and New Mexico State as there should have been. Coming in and talking to the different companies, the governments, the entities that are here in San Juan County, and the tribes that are here. Looking at the chapters, looking at Ute, Mountain Ute, even Southern Ute, and bringing them down. The Hickoryas. Really looking at what can we be doing and what makes sense for a university to come in and work with the other schools that we do have here. And how do we start looking at research? And more importantly, how can we begin to educate our communities on the opportunities? We're at the cusp of a number of things: a railroad, a pump storage hydro project, gas development and solar development. Trump has just now issued another $100 million that he says he'll put into renovations of existing coal plants, which we have one right up the road here. Looking at CCUS and how do we capture that carbon to enhance the life of a number of areas. But again, really having those discussions here with the right entities so that we all know what's possible and we can all figure out, okay, here's the priorities that we'll go after, and let's go after them and work at it as a full unit. You know, we have schools here, we have students here. The other thing that I look at is as we do this, and what you're showing there, is building that workforce. We don't have those civil engineers coming out anymore. We don't have those mechanical engineers coming out, especially on the native side. You know, how do we build that piece of it back up? And so again, those are some of the things that, looking at you, are there ways that we can really begin to enhance outreach with New Mexico Tech as we begin to forge into this new area of energy diversification here in the San Juan County area, understanding that yes, coal and oil are a foundation. Why is that a foundation? How do we best begin to educate these areas to our public, but also indicate, yes, we're looking at diversifying, looking at other alternative ways of producing energy. So a challenge that I extend to you.
That's great. So I appreciate the challenge. So yesterday, we visited our colleagues at NTU. And one of the things that they asked me, because I didn't expect to really have to say anything, because I'm a physicist by training, and so words, you know, there's only so many, I have a word limit per day. Okay, I can do equations all day, but words are very difficult for me. So I was asked to speak yesterday, and part of it was, what do I see my vision for the partnership and where things go, and quite frankly, I said, well, all of these things are based on relationships and connections and making sure that we have conversations and also learning about what is of interest to the local community, what the needs are, and then what the opportunities are so where we can partner together. Because New Mexico Tech in and of itself, we're way too small of an institution to take on the issues associated with different counties, with the Navajo Nation, because we have our own issues on our own little campus in little old Socorro. And so, in fact, I'm sure all of us on the tech side could go ahead and say, the first thing we need to do even on the tech campus is build relationships and have conversations and break down silos. But one way of doing that is by partnering with the Socorro community and other communities in New Mexico to solve the common problems that we're all interested in. And the one thing about tech that's nice about it is that you have this STEM focus and interest in all of these different areas from a variety of different perspectives. So for example, when we're talking about the different grants that are there, and maybe one that's led by the PRRC, it's not just a petroleum engineering faculty member that's involved. They're going to go ahead and reach out to Dr. Ronaldo Sosi over in Earth and Environmental Science. And from the environmental science perspective, how do we go ahead and incorporate those folks? It may involve somebody over in mechanical engineering who's working with drones. And so you build an interdisciplinary team. And then the key thing is, that's for that one research project. Now, if we think of it and take it from an applied perspective, how can we go ahead then and partner with communities? And that's the educational, that's more the kind of the research aspect. Then from the educational aspect, it's the same issue that they talked about at NTU yesterday is the same issue that we face. And quite frankly, it's no different than the same issue that I faced when I was in Wisconsin, when I was in Washington, because when I was in Wisconsin and a student would come to me and work in the lab, they would say, I love working with lasers and doing all these things, but what job is there for me such that I can come back to blank, blank, Wisconsin and and live, because that's where I want to go. I go to Washington. Oh, this is wonderful. I love working with this. Oh, I have no problem going out to graduate school at this place, but I want to come back to blank, blank, Washington in order to go ahead and have a career and live there. And I come to New Mexico, and it's the same thing. I grew up in New York. I'm no longer in New York. So it's okay. I tell people you can leave too. It's okay. All right? You can leave the area, but a lot of them still want to come back. And that's where it's about showing the opportunities of how you can go ahead and have a degree and yet do something else beyond that, because all of the skills are transferable. Now, for better or worse, I've never had a management course. I've had 0 accounting courses. And yet here I am, interim president. Woo, okay? All right? I have to somehow maintain the budget of the institution. Okay, I have to go ahead and make sure that we manage appropriately, that we follow all HR rules and regulations and policies, right? All of these things still have to be done. Well, but I have skills that I can use to do that. And so, and again, they're transferable. And so educating the population, not only the students, but the homes from which they come, to let them know it's okay to go ahead and go forth into this area, because you'll be able to do a wide range of things. What my parents, my father was a firefighter, my mother was a homemaker, my grandfather was a firefighter, my uncle was a firefighter, some of my other uncles were on the docks or in sanitation, okay? So it was truly a blue-collar kind of opportunity, and there were plenty of jobs in New York City to which my parents kind of pushed me for. But they also said, get an education, because the education opens the opportunity. And my father loved his work. The only reason why he retired is because they forced him to, okay? Because he couldn't pass the physical anymore. He was, mid-50s at that point, and putting on all of the fire gear and trying to pass it in a timed exam was just physically too much. But that was the only way they'd get him out of the firehouse, because he just loved it. And he looked back and he said, I loved every opportunity that I had, but it was the only opportunity I had. Okay? He was limited because of that the lack of an education. And so what I tell students is that you can get that education and still do whatever you want. But the education is what opens the door. So it's a choice. And that's the thing that I try to tell the young people, is that it's a choice. And a STEM education is fantastic because it really does open the door to all of these different areas. And that's why we're interested in the outreach. So again, what is the ways that New Mexico Tech can partner? Well, we can partner on the research side, just like PRRC is doing now in collaboration with PESCO, in collaboration with NTU and the Navajo Nation. That's one example. And there are other researchers that are out there that may have similar interests. And so having those conversations with people at the institution, people like Lique, Bob, Jennifer, and our faculty and staff here, that would be one opportunity. But it's also then about educating about educational opportunities. And some of that is done through the outreach programs. And so if you know of school districts who are interested in participating in things like science fair, science Olympiad, maybe things like robotics, reach out to us and we'll see what type of partnerships we can do. And so that is one aspect that we because again, by getting them when they're still in that K through 12 and allowing them to see the opportunities and to see that STEM is more than just doing homework, that it's all about problem solving and skill, and I can do all of these other things with it, that it's not exclusive of these other activities, it's actually inclusive, that's a way to go ahead and get the students hooked. And the more hands-on opportunities, and if they can have those early wins, they can get excited by STEM, that'll push them to go through that process. And so that's why I'm a big fan of those outreach programs, and that's why we support them as much as we can. And that's what we're willing to do. And so we're willing to go ahead and do those partnerships. And the good thing is you have schools right here in which we do collaborate. NTU, San Juan College, these are great partners. Okay, our job is not to supplant what their activities are. Our job is to collaborate with them to go ahead and facilitate opportunities to do it together. And that's one of the key things that we're looking to do, because we can't do it alone. We have to have partners, not only other educational partners, but other community partners. So that's a really long-winded answer, okay? But that allows me to at least think and try to respond. Yes?
Yeah, so I sit on the board for the Explora Science Center Children's Museum in Albuquerque.
Yep.
So we really appreciate when you guys come out and participate in the activities that you provide for the community. I know recently you had a couple of students that came out on October 25th for the College and Career Fairs event. They were really wonderful. They did a great job interacting with the kids and letting people know what the school was all about. So it's really wonderful that you guys are doing that. We appreciate that from the museum. And but I wanted to ask you guys, just get a little insight on the affordability and cost. I hear that a lot of your student population are from the state here in New Mexico, which is good to hear. Is it pretty affordable? How's the tuition? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The tuition tuition and fees is on the order of, let me say, around $9,500 for an undergraduate student for a year. And so the best thing about the New Mexico is that there are both the lottery and opportunity scholarship. So the lottery scholarship will kick in the second semester in which they're in college, and that covers tuition. The opportunity scholarship covers also tuition and fees. And so that can start right away in their first semester, and then it basically supplements the lottery scholarship to cover additional expenses. It does not cover things like housing and stuff like that, but there are then local scholarships that then each university would go ahead and provide students that could go ahead and cover that, as well as just outside scholarships. So from affordability perspective, students in New Mexico have a lot of opportunity. And this is not just at Tech, this is at all public institutions in the state of New Mexico. And so it's open to all of that. And so that makes higher education very affordable, or at least much more affordable than in comparison to other states. And so that is one thing that's there. Can I ask you to also comment on Curtis's, if you want to talk about the, because I thought he was doing something recent with that.
But before I do that, I would actually like to add a few more points to that as well. So in addition to the affordability and scholarships, you also heard about the working opportunities that we give our students. So they have a lot of opportunities to also make money while they are working on our research projects. And I think that's something else that is really important. And so speaking back to the question also about the Carnegie classifications, you heard about the R1 and the R2, which is related to the expenditures for the research, which we are same as an R1. What's really important is Carnegie has also recognized the affordability and the value of the education. President Jackson gave you some statistics on that as well, but Carnegie recognizes New Mexico Tech as the highest value university in New Mexico, and that is related to the salary and the work opportunities that students will have after they graduate. So that's another aspect of that affordability. Not only are we affordable, they have working opportunities while they're on campus and have a higher salary when they are graduating. So that's another element that we really need to look at. I also want to come back to the partnerships for a moment. So we want to be a partner, but we want to be a partner by listening to you. Not only listening to what you need or see the opportunities that we can bring New Mexico Tech to the region and to all of your companies. This is also another element where we are listening to what you as companies need for your workforce training, because we immediately incorporate that into our curriculum. Our curriculum is constantly updated by listening to all of you for your needs in the skills and the training that our students need, which is another element of that value that we bring back to the workforce, to economic development, to all of your companies. So I wanted to bring that back also to your question. Explora, we are just now entering a new partnership with Explora, New Mexico Tech, and another company in Albuquerque to focus on K-12. And this is with some funding also through New Mexico State. So we're very excited about that new opportunity. Curtis O'Malley is one of our faculty who's leading that effort. He's also the faculty who is doing our robotics K-12 programs, middle school programs, and Mine and Mayhem, and Mechie Mayhem. So we're very excited about that new partnership. So thank you for that. That's really exciting.
First off, let's give a round of applause to our guests here. They're going to be sticking around for a few minutes if there's any additional questions. We're going to try to make these trains run on time here. But I do want to say, what they're doing here today is truly outreach. It's building those connections to each one of us, explaining how they are a force multiplier, how they're an engine of economic development for this, not just the state, but for this region. And having a board member, an active board member as well from this institution working with Four Corners Economic Development has been an incredible experience as well. He's brought us opportunities. He's showed us the direction on growth sectors. He's provided guidance on what's going on in Santa Fe and also in Washington. And finally, I want to say thank you to each one of you. I didn't go through and acknowledge each one of our officials and partners here because it's almost every single one of you, okay? It would take 5 minutes to read the names, but we can't do what we do without you. Each one of you, from the private business owner to the retired gentleman who just wants to give back, each one of you make this community stronger. So I'm incredibly honored to be up here today. And we will keep doing these. We will keep bringing to you topics and information of ways to move our community forward, and that's exactly what they did today. Now, the next one is scheduled for February the 10th. We don't have a topic yet, so if you know of something that's on point, that's powerful, that will move the needle and make this community stronger, please let's talk about that. So, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this community and being engaged. Thank you for being a partner of Four Corners Economic Development, and I look forward to seeing you in February. Thank you.